Today my goal is to make you a master at peek shots. I'm gonna give you a place to practice them, teach you how to do basically every single one of them, and then show you some in-game examples so you can kind of get a better idea of it. So to start out, I'm loading into the Jivan practice map. So there's two places where you can practice peeks, the free build with bots room or rapid piece control. Let's go to the free build with bots room and you'll just turn on bot damage and you can change the speed at which the bot will shoot you. So if I come up here and I'm exposed, he'll hit me. If I expose again, he'll hit me. So the first peek we're going to talk about is a right-hand triangle peek or a peanut butter peek. So the key to this peek is making sure that you're behind the build when you confirm it. A lot of times, people will be standing back here and they'll make it and see the bot can hit me. But if I come over here, then the bot can't hit me. But additionally, when you're jumping to take this peek, you don't just want to jump straight up because you can get hit. You want to jump along the side, just like that. So when you're setting up a peek, you really need to pay attention to where the player is in the box. In this situation, he's right in the center. So I'll just make sure that I'm not exposing myself while setting up that peek. The triangle peek is one that you're going to use in a lot of situations. You'll see in the clips later on. But the next peek is a window peek. And as you can see, if I make a middle window, this is a very big window, but if I make it on the side, it's a bit smaller on either side. So if you ever set up the middle window, you just have to keep in mind that it's going to be you're going to be a bit more visible in this situation. So you'll just want to make sure you're more to the side. But let's say the enemy was right there. You wouldn't want to set this up. You would want to set that up so you can step into it or set up a triangle like this. But after setting up a window peek, all you got to do is just step into that window peek and then reset your wall. You're always going to want to reset your wall right after taking these peek shots. The next type of peek is, let's say the enemy's to the side here. You can use this wall as a peek by going like this. So I'd set it up like this. I can edit this wall here and I'm behind this wall. The enemy can't really see me. If they were over there, then yeah, they might be able to see me. But right here, we just step into it and it's just like a window peek. Then there's also peeks from above. So the most typical above peek would be something like this, where you step into it and then immediately build a floor. Or maybe you'll be doing a double edit. And in this situation, you kind of want to go behind the floor here. But let's say that I was down here doing a double edit. I would want to make sure that this wall is here, because if I make the double edit, the enemy might claim this wall, make a window, and place a cone over me. So a lot of times when you're doing a double edit, you might want to build this wall afterwards and set it up like that. That wall comes in handy for a lot of reasons. For example, if you're setting up a double edit, they might jump up here and just smack you. But if you build that wall, you kind of have extra protection and you might block their shot. And then you can set up a peek. But now there's a lot of different ways to peek from below. One of which, probably my favorite, is the Martaz peek, where you would have a ramp here, a floor above you. You edit this back tile and place a ramp. You can see you can jump through this and actually hit the enemy. I do this all the time. You'll see in the clips later. But you can also peek from below by doing something like this. You double edit through, and then you basically just set up a normal peek. But the last way is you could do something like this, setting up a peek like this, where you have the double edit here. You do the double edit, maybe claim that wall, edit the wall, and then jump and take the peek. There's a lot of ways to go about a fight. You want to be unpredictable, fast, but most importantly, safe. That's the whole point of peek shots, not exposing yourself. Now, one more way to take peeks that I'm really not that good at, get a ramp over the enemy. They'll set up a peek like this and jump and reset their ramp. That's something I need to practice, but that's another peek I figured I'd throw in here. There's always creative ways to do peeks, Throughout a fight, you just want to be thinking about how can you take shots on the enemy without exposing yourself. So for in this situation, I could just jump and take a shot like that. So those are the basics of how to do peek shots. Let's hop into some in-game examples. We'll start out with some basic examples and work our way up. So in this first clip, there's just a dude behind this wall, and this is just a basic clip. But when I take the wall, I set up a top right triangle peek and just step into it and then reset. Simple example of a peek shot. Similarly, in this next clip, I'm really weak here, but the enemy's really weak too. All I need to do is set up a nice peek where I'm gonna deal damage but not take any. So I'm being really patient, feeling it out. I know he has a spray gun, and if I get hit once, I'm dead. At first, I set up a right-hand peek, but it's not set up very well. I couldn't get that peek off, so I reset my wall, and then I end up shooting my wall so that it's not one shot. He could have sprayed through it and just instantly killed me. But he's just waiting for me to make a bad edit, so I just take my time and set up a perfect right-hand peek here, and yeah, that's how it's done. Here, the enemy is boxed up, and he has no cone in his box. peaks. So I drop down while spraying and place a ramp in, and then immediately go off to the side and piece control. He hit a crazy shot here, like pre-fired me through the window, but overall this was a pretty solid play. You know, I predicted him and I did it pretty safely through a window. He just got a nice shot. It happens. But after I have him full boxed here, I'm able to step into that window peak just like I was showing you earlier. I get that damage, reset the wall, and since he's spraying, I jump up on a ramp as well so he doesn't bleed any bullets to hit me. But then I flip that ramp, set up a right-hand triangle peak just like before, and finish that fight perfectly safely. Very solid peaks right there. Here I'm in a fight for the win in ranked reload, and this is just a simple example of how to take a peek from above. As you can see, the enemy was below me. I don't think he had materials or something, so I just stepped into the shot and then immediately built a floor after. Simple example of a peek from above, and then shortly after, I did a little trick shot to win it because bro just gave up. Now right here, this isn't a perfect peek, but it's just an example of how, you know, you can improvise. The enemy's ramping up here, so I kind of just wait for him to appear, quickly shoot, and then build a wall. It's kind of similar to a peek shot in the sense that I had protection right after taking that shot. Isn't perfect because he could have built that wall and whatnot, but I'm just trying to give you a wide variety of examples here. In this fight, I got the opponent weak right off the bat. It wasn't a good peek or anything, but we're gonna look at the later part here. So I'm pressuring towards the enemy, trying to claim any empty builds, such as this ramp in the opponent's box, and he ends up editing straight under my ramp here. And by editing the ramp in this direction, you can see that the enemy has no angle on me, but I can see his toes. This is just another example of how you can improvise. You just wanna think about how you can set up peek shots without being exposed. There's always going to be creative ways to do it. This fight right here, I was cooking this opponent to start it. I had to drop off this bridge because there's so many places you can't build and it just felt awkward. So I dropped down and then I immediately just wait for him to drop. I'm kind of trying to pre-fire him editing down. Players oftentimes do not expect this, but I missed the shot, unfortunate. Then I quickly got a cone over top of him. He took that wall, unfortunate again, but I piece control out the side and try to set up a nice peek on him. First shot didn't connect, but I set up another nice peek to counter his peek, and as you can see, it was a big hit. But in this situation, let's say he was more to the side here where I have marked. In that case, my peek would have been bad, but because he wasn't all the way off to the right, and I got way behind my peek here, this was a perfect peek shot. Sometimes you're gonna mess up. Follow your gut, follow your instincts, don't hesitate, but that's just a good example. I immediately try to get him pre-boxed on the opposite side, but unfortunately he got the floor. And then shortly after he ends up trading damage with me, so now I'm a little weak too. But because I had this RPG, I only popped like one mini. I did not want him to heal up, so I quickly went over and RPG'd his box, pre-fired him, and quickly finished the fight after. This right here was just a quick little play in reload. I did a side jump here, edited the window simply to place a cone above the enemy, but then I reset that wall and set up an actual good peek for the peek shot. If you're ever exposed, like with that window edit, he was in the center of the box, I could have gotten hit. So in that case, just reset it and set up a better peek. After getting that initial damage, I just quickly went up to high ground, got a different angle, and finished the fight. Quick movement like that can really surprise the opponent. Now this is one of my favorite clips of the day. It started out in a box fight and I was just trying to pre-fire the enemy's peek here. If they have a good peek set up on you and you have a good peek set up on them, for example, he was behind this wall here trying to take a peek, sometimes just jumping, taking a safe peek, and predicting where he's going to be can lead to you getting a health advantage. In this situation, I didn't hit the shot because he didn't peek at the time I took the shot, but it's a low risk, high reward situation. Anyways, I get a new angle, I see him place a ramp here, so I build these high walls just in case if he went up. Sure enough, he did go up, but he got an extra layer above me. So I set up the Martaz peek, which I showed you earlier. When the opponent is one layer above you, you can set up this peek and go for it. And in this situation, he edited on me and I was able to get a perfect shot on him from below. It's when you're one layer under that this works. Takes some getting used to, but once you get it a couple times, it just becomes habit to set up that peek when somebody's above you. A lot of times I'll set it up, but he won't expose himself and then I'll just continue the fight. Right here, I predicted the enemy was going to drop down on my wall, so I made a window, placed a cone, and then took a right-hand peek shot. Predicting where the enemy is going to drop can be a good way to get some damage dealt because it's like you're ahead of him in the fight. I continued to pressure and eventually dropped down. I love to pressure boxes from the left side. Like I'm off to the left here, and this makes a perfect angle for me if he sets up a right-hand peek to simply pre-fire him. But the way I outplayed him here was just by pickaxe baiting. You know, I pickaxe his wall once and then pull out my shotgun and got the pre-fire. Now for this clip, we're going to start talking about counter peeks a little bit. The enemy was pressuring me, so I get off to the left and try to counter peek his right-hand peek. I could have gotten even more off to the side here, but from this angle, you actually have the better angle on the enemy. It's best if you're pressed up all the way against this wall, but as they're setting up that right-hand peek, just move left and backwards and go for that pre-fire just like I did. Similarly, in this clip, I knew the enemy was behind this floor. So rather than just smacking on that floor, I kind of spray it while backing up and to the left. Just like in the last clip, I'm moving back and to the left. And that gave me a really good angle to counter peek this player. He probably had hardly any view of me. Meanwhile, I had a perfect headshot lined up. Baiting the enemy into taking peeks and then countering it is a good way to get those kills. In this situation, I'm moving to the left while he's setting up his right-hand peek, just like I was talking about, and then immediately place the wall right after taking that shot. And then while I'm pressuring in here, you can see my movement. As he sets up this right-hand peek, I move to the right, because if I kept moving to the left, he would have had a perfect shot on me. Instead, I duck back to the right so he really doesn't have an angle. And then as he resets that wall, it is one shot, so I just spray on through and get the kill. We've got a few more cool examples here. We're getting into some more realistic fights that aren't just plain and simple taking a peek shot. So this is going to be a bit more advanced, but bear with me here. You might learn something. Right here, I get the wall on the enemy. He's on a ramp and I have this wall in front of him. So I edit it and get a cone over top. Then I quickly jump off to the side and claim his side wall and set up just a basic right-hand peek. But I'm going to let you watch the rest of this clip and just listen carefully. You may not have heard it, but the enemy wasted his pump shot. In that situation, you can simply just edit on the opponent fully and expose yourself because he can't shoot his pump again. The only time you wouldn't want to do this is if you're weak, because he could obviously kill you with a spray gun. But I was still healthy, so I just flipped my ramp and took that 50-50, and of course I won it. I start out this next fight with one of those counter peeks where I'm off to the left, shooting and then building a wall. But now I have to go on the attack because he's weak. I'm just building up to him, blocking my angles as I go up because the last thing I want to do is give him a pump shot on me. But right here, I'm going to slow this down. I flip my cone up so that I can take a peek shot. I jump and build walls right after taking that shot. This is actually a really good peek from below if you ever have a chance, taking a shot from below and building walls or a cone above you to block that angle. This next clip is a new situation that I haven't mentioned yet, but it can be a good option. So me and the opponent have both dealt damage to each other. We're about the same HP, but he's continuing to pressure, so I have to defend. At this point, I bait him into a bad play. He's pressuring like crazy, so I make a bad edit and immediately reset it, hoping that he shoots my wall. Sure enough, he does, and as he shoots my wall, I shoot him at the same time. Sometimes setting up a bad peek for a very momentary second can waste the enemy's shot and give you a chance to counter. That's something that's a bit easier to do on lower ping, so if you're higher ping, I wouldn't go for that play. Two more examples, and the first one here might be my favorite clip of the whole day. It's not that important to know, but I'm pretty sure I just invented a move with this. So I set up a Martaz peek on the enemy's box here, and I jump through it and shoot my RPG and then hold my wall. I'm pretty sure I just invented a new way to take somebody's wall and full box them. I almost messed it up because I didn't know he was under this cone, but I backed up into my box and set up another Martaz peek and finished the fight. I mean, that was one of the coolest clips I've ever hit. And now finally, there's one other concept which we didn't talk about. It's piece control from behind a right-hand peek. This is a whole nother video in and of itself, but basically piece control is just getting builds around the enemy in a fight so that you have the advantage. In this clip, you can see I set up this right-hand triangle peek to get the enemy coned and boxed. That's a good example of piece control from behind cover. I kind of messed up because I let him walk into my box. It would have been better to do that through a window. But long story short, that's probably the next skill you're going to want to learn. Piece control from behind cover. I have a whole nother video called How to Piece Control for Beginners, and that's going to be the place where you can learn that skill. I even have a practice map for you to practice it. Link to that is down in the description, but I hope this video helped you guys out. More content is on the way, so stay tuned, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.